views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Come on, Chicago! Make some noise! Put your hands together. MAPC. You know whether I'm right. You know, Lord, whether I'm wrong. Yeah, you whether I'm right or wrong. Yeah, yeah. You know whether I'm right. You know, Lord, whether I'm wrong. Yeah, you know. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. While I'm down here, Lord, search my heart. Yeah. Lord, search my heart. While I'm down here praying, Lord, search my heart. You know, Lord, whether I'm right. You know, Lord, whether I'm wrong. Yeah. Oh, yeah. While I'm down here singing, Lord, search my heart. Na 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 na. Lord, search my heart. While I'm down here singing, Lord, search my heart. You know, Lord, whether I'm right. You know, Lord, whether I'm wrong. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. See, some of us got some issues that we deal with day in and day out. But we know that with the word of God, only God can clean us up and make things right in our lives. So the word of God strips us of those things that hinder us from the blessings of God. That's why we ask the Lord today to search our hearts, to search our minds. Oh, search me. I need you to search my mind. Lord, I need you to search my heart. Search my soul. Yeah, search me. Lord, I need you to take that thing out of me. Oh, and clean me up on the inside. Search my soul. Oh, if you find anything that should not be, I need to take it out and
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good whatever it is, wherever you are. My name is LaDonna V. Miller, and I am here with Our Journey. Our Journey is a show of a mental health segment where we dive into particular mental health topics, mental health things, ways in which our everyday lives intersect and dissect with mental health. All right. So I am a licensed clinical social worker here in the state of Illinois. So this information here should be used for information or educational purposes. I am a therapist. I am not your therapist. If I happen to be your therapist, like your client, and you decided to listen in, wonderful, great. Definitely feel free to speak to me to dissect or dive into something, that particular topic to see how it is reflected in your daily life. All right. Now, for today's segment, what we are going to talk about is attachment styles and how attachment styles, or our particular attachment styles, uh, kind of interact with our lifestyles, right? Like how our attachment styles have leads to what it is in particular, how we connect with individuals. Okay, and so there are there are four attachment styles in which are commonly referred to or may have been theorized, right? And so um, being able to dissect and to know what they are is definitely something that's helpful. The reason why I was like, you know what, tonight is going to be a good day to bring this as a segment is because, ironically, I had maybe 3 or 4 clients in the past 2 weeks to ask in particular. Well, 2 clients asked particularly about attachment style. They'd done some kind of research, they wanted to dive into it. So we did some assessments and we really worked through it, right? And then there were some other individuals who were in services, and I'm like, you know what, this may be something that's helpful for them because I'm looking at the way in which they're interacting, and there's something that's there that's going to be helpful for us to know and how we connect with ourselves and other individuals in our family. Okay, and so the four types of attachment styles are secure, avoidant, anxious, and disorganized, right? Those are the four overarching that's typically discussed. That's by John Bowlby. That's his theory for us really understanding. He brought that out in the 1950s and being able to do the experiments. And then it was expanded by Mary Ainsworth, and being able to know what they are and how they interact with us is going to be something important, especially when we're forming intimate relationships, when we're forming friendships, or even when you're relating to your children or other individuals who are in your family, because it's something that's stemming from really childhood, adolescenthood, which leads us to a particular place in how we communicate. Okay, and so you're really trying to being able to understand what they are is going to be helpful, right? Now, have you thought about, or have you noticed that maybe things are a little bit different, or people are acting a little bit different in my romantic relationships, right? You're usually noticing some things are different, or maybe you're the jealous type, right? Maybe you're a little bit jealous or feeling alone if you're alone for too long, right? Or perhaps that you are confident things are going to go well with your partner and being able to thrive and to move, right? And so knowing your particular unique attachment style is going to be something that's important to move forward. Right. So the theory states that the primary goal of a human infant is to maintain proximity to its caregiver, which then was necessary for survival along with evolution. Right. And so that is explained to us, and that's how we are able to connect. But Bowlby believes that by us being able, because of evolution, infants and toddlers, right, they're able to monitor their parents, see their strategies, and that would then ultimately allow for them to stay close, right? Form those relationships. What are they looking like when things are going on? When they're crying, are they able to kind of sit up by themselves without having a parent there once they're at appropriate age? You know, that 6 to 9 month range. What are things looking like? Are they able to? I'm gonna pause because y'all know me. I'm gonna keep on going, right? Let me keep giving y'all the overarching thing because I'm gonna be dived into each one without even telling y'all what they are. Okay. And so being able to move and to know, right? Like what's those connections? What was going on when they was little that's probably led them, you was holding on to your kids so much. Now they got this issue. They ain't able to let go. They're not able to move. They're not able to thrive because that was an attachment style that they developed. That was something psychologically that went on, and now things ain't working out too hot in their relationship. Okay. But being able for us to know, and that secure, avoidant, being basically like dismissive, that's what avoiding is, or what we call anxious avoiding in children, or if you're anxious or, you know, kind of preoccupied or anxious ambivalent, or being disorganized, or just basically you're kind of fearful, not able to kind of do things like that. Okay, that's kind of the gist of it, right? And being able to be essentially insecure, right? So you're secure, you're insecure. It's basically the gist of it, but that's a classification of those other three being essentially insecure, and that attachment style secure being secure, right? And so, for us to be able to know kind of how parents are fulfilling needs, how those needs are also then being fulfilled in romantic relationships, how we are judging and understanding how character is necessarily built and that dependency upon others to be able to know, right? Because sometimes we are unconsciously really expecting something from another individual, whether it be a romantic partner or a friend, and you are not maybe aware of their attachment style. And it's like, okay, like they're not giving me the kind of love, or they're not listening to me in the way I need to listen, be listened to. I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling comforted. You over here doing all these other things. Oftentimes I've had that type of miscommunication, especially in couples counseling, where we've had to revisit this just a few days ago. It's like, hey, what's your attachment style? Oftentimes people ask, okay, if you don't know it, right? That's where you're getting this information now, because if we have different type of attachment styles as that partner, as that friend, as that husband, as that wife, we're able to know, like, okay, something to that. They're secure attached, so they don't need all this extra. Oh, they anxious, ambivalent. Okay, well, what's going on with this? How can we get ready to connect? What is it that we really getting ready to do to make things better? What can I do to make them feel supported? Make them get ready to be rocking and rolling with this relationship or with this friendship, right? How are things able to be done? And so, in a 2018 study, it showed that women are more likely to, they were scoring higher in the anxiety realm of being able to know and to identify that that's the type of relationship bonding or attachment style that they have. While in that same study, it showed that men are more so avoidant, right? They're in the avoidance type of attachment style, but these are not necessarily something that's a large thing in particular, but understanding that there's no direct path, even though that study identified genders. That doesn't say that everyone has to fall into that particular situation, that particular attachment style, but rather that's something that is preferred amongst the individuals, right? That's something that's preferred of how we coalesce, how we go ahead and thrive through, right? But aside from that, gender is not assigning what our attachment styles are. That's the joyful part about this, because that depends on the individual. And even if you're in the same family, you're not gonna have the same attachment style, because the parents, either you was the first child, you was this, you was that, right? Things have happened differently. You attach differently because psychologically that's something that you did differently, right? And so, what I do want to kind of place into your minds before we really dive deeper into what these attachment styles are, how they're affecting us, what's some symptoms, how can you figure it out, how should you treat the people with a particular thing, how can you tell that's what it is, right? Before we go into all of that, what I want you to understand and to know that despite your primary relationships, your primary attachment styles with some work, right? You know, I'm not gonna ever tell you something that you can't just, I'm gonna give you some information and you got to work on it, right? So with work, attachment styles can develop and change. So that's definitely something to be aware of, that I want you to be excited about, to not be bogged down and say, oh, this is my attachment style. What am I gonna do? I got the solution. Not sure I got multiple solutions or things that you should maybe try out. I can tell you that it's going to work necessarily, but it's going to be helpful and it worked for others. All right. And so you can definitely change it. And so first we'll dive into what a secure, or what secure attachment style is. So secure attachment is defined as the ability to build healthy, long-lasting relationships and being able to thrive, right? You're able to get those friendships, they're healthy, and you're, or other type of relationships, and able to move forward and kind of continue. All right. And so it's typically developed and you're able to see it by there being a result of caregivers and children. Like when you were a little kid, you're able to have reassurance without that, without seeking that reassurance or validation, and there was no punishment that was kind of as a result of that. All right. So ultimately, as a child, you felt safe. You felt understood, you felt comforted, you felt valued in those early interactions, right? You felt like you were something. And so being able to know and to thrive at a young age led you to, when you were developing other relationships, you were able to take that risk. You were able to have those friendships. You're able to keep the friendship. I've seen a lot of people who make friends and then they don't have them no more. And then they show up, or they might be some people I talk to that's not clients, right? Who show up and y'all know who y'all are, especially y'all who not clients. They show up and they say, oh, they not. I know new friends. I don't need no new friends because it's all, and they always come with the story that's something about them, all the other people and stuff. Never anything about them. Yeah, we're gonna watch out for them, but that's okay. That is typically something that we're going to look for and be able to thrive, right? So your caregivers were oftentimes, if you're secure, have secure attachment, they were oftentimes emotionally available for you, right? They were aware of their own emotions and their own behaviors, and they were able to thrive, right? So ultimately, the thing is, if you was in a relationship that had some care and concern, and they knew when they was in tune, you probably are performing secure. You have a secure attachment style, right? So now, let me tell you kind of what some things are, some signs and symptoms to tell you like, okay, they have secure attachment, right? Or I have secure attachment. Would be the ability to regulate emotions, comfortable being alone. They're easy to connect with, high self-esteem, ability to be emotionally available. They're easily or able to trust other individuals. They're able to connect. They're able to or have the ability to self-reflect in partnerships. They're having and comfortable in close friendships or relationships, right? And necessarily able to move. It typically shows up or manifested in relationships by feeling secure emotionally and physically in those relationships where they can engage in a healthy way. It's not that blah, 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 blah. We're gonna go to all of that later on. That's why I was gonna. Y'all don't like when I give y'all examples because I don't want y'all to be, blowing up my phone, sending messages, doing all of that because y'all think I'm talking about y'all. This happened for a whole bunch of people, not just y'all. But I'm not gonna give an example because it look healthy, right? The people are able to engage in the relationships. They're able to thrive and give feedback, right? If both individuals are secure attached. And able to thrive. They're able to trust their partner's intentions or their friends' intentions, and there's not really much jealousy that's going on. People, you can walk around and thrive in any damn kind of conversations and all the different stuff that's going on, right? And so and they're able to move and to process and to do some things. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a little bit of a pause, right? So I know I'm giving information overload and I'm good for that, but I'm going to pause us right here. When we come back, we're going to begin again processing the other three parts of good evening. We're going to process through the other parts of the attachment styles, right? What they look like, why they're helpful, and why we even going through this at all. All right. Stay tuned. We're going to take a little bit of a break, get some music, and we're going to come back with all the other information.
Come on,
Hello, 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 and welcome back to those of you who have previously been with us for the first part of our show. Welcome, welcome to those who may have just been tuning in or just joining us. I'm LaDonna Miller, and we are here with our journey. We're processing through today what attachment styles are, why they're helpful for us, and how we can move forward once we've identified how we may interact with individuals, okay? And so I said there's four attachment styles. So far, we've gone through one of the attachment styles with them being secure. And what secure is you're able to be aware, you're self-aware, you were able to have someone who was emotionally available, kind of when you were infant, toddler, really, really young, able to see that, you're able to self-reflect in those different relationships, and you're able to move forward, right? As a high level overview. And so now we are going to process through the other three attachment styles, right? And why they are important. And I do want to share why they're important before even hopping into the rest of them, right? Like they are important. Now was it those? It's like, well, it's kind of late right now because and then I don't want y'all to leave here talking about, oh, I got on this thing and this therapist was saying that my mind is like it is because you wasn't able to be there for me, and that's why I'm like this. Now don't leave out the other part. I did say that it's due to that, right? That is the way in which we are developing our attachment styles. Also, let you know that you could change it when you put some work into it, right? So if you want to change, you can. You're not stuck with this situation, okay? If it's something that's maybe coming for you, that's an attachment style that you may not be the most proud of, that's okay. That's why you're here to learn, right? You're able to learn some information, maybe for yourself, maybe to take over to a friend or family member that this may be helpful for you to share with them, or helpful for you to understand. They got this kind of attachment style. Maybe I should work with them like this because it's going to be a little bit more helpful than me doing the things the way I was. Maybe I won't be as irritated or frustrated because this is a little bit of an explanation, not an excuse, an explanation, right? And being able to thrive and to know, hey, this is what's there. So you can change, right? So next we're going to the avoidant attachment style. And so avoidant is either avoidant or dismissive avoidant or anxious avoidant. Those are all going to mean the same thing, right? But Bowlby, when he first created the theory, that it was just titled as avoidant, there's a plethora of individuals who've come with some great work, and I use lots of the work in practice, right? Depending on who the client is, if we're working on some individual things, some family things, some couples things, or even kind of smaller children, where it's maybe dive in a little bit deeper as to why there is an importance, right? So I'm synthesizing a lot of the work, so that way I can bring it to you in this short segment. I can give y'all some books if you want to read it. Got them for you. And read them, right? And so for us to really be able to dive into this of knowing, okay, those are all the same thing, right? So when I say avoidant, I mean in all of those, because you might read some literature, or if you're kind of like browsing the internet right now, you're gonna find you that there's these other things that go along with avoidant. Like, oh well, am I anxious avoidant? And am I oh my goodness, am I dismissive avoidant? What am I? Right? When we first created, it was just one big thing of avoidant, and they're all kind of similar, but it defines it just a tad bit more depending on the theorist. Okay, and so it's defined by failures to build long-term relationships with others due to really that inability to engage in that physical or emotional intimacy, right? So it's not necessarily something um, that you would have maybe known, but now that you know and you're gathering this information, you ain't have a long term. You're always as a person who always got new friends, right? New relationship, new something. Now, sometimes people who have new friends, new relationships, and don't have the other ones, maybe it was something else going on, right? We're not gonna say that every single person they got one is the issue. But if they the person who keep on saying that it's everybody else is the reason why I ain't got no friends, this might be a bit of an explanation, right? Not definite because I ain't talking to them. I don't know, but this is, this a little helpful, right? A little helpful tips so we can know, right? So it's typically develops really, they're all developed in childhood, but it's developed in childhood if you had a strict or emotionally distant and absent caregivers or parents or whoever was people who take care of you, right? Your caregivers. And so it may be manifested, or you may know or kind of see that your caregivers had these particular characteristics. So you might have to think on this one, especially if you're a little bit older, right? They left you to fend for yourself, right? Like you was kind of by yourself a lot. You had to do a bunch of stuff by yourself. You was independent. Okay, able to do some movement, right? You are slow to respond. They've been slow to respond to you, like in your basic needs, or maybe they were reprimanding you really for depending on them, or they expected you to be independent and not look to them to do some things, or maybe they rejected you when you were expressing your needs or emotions. That's typically the individuals who are going to fall into the avoidant realm, or the avoidant attachment style. And so some avoidant producing parents, or the parents who are kind of get those people or individuals who are avoidant, some of them were just outright like neglectful, but oftentimes they may not have been, right? But they could have just been busy, right? Like busy jobs, busy things. Maybe they were maybe just disinterested in really kind of having children, or maybe with the things that you were excited about or being involved in, or maybe they weren't necessarily interested in all those things, but they were more so maybe concerned about those grades or those particular extracurricular activities that they were signing you up for, or really kind of having you to fulfill their hopes and dreams, or things that they wanted to get, and not necessarily listening to you. It's not that they was like not there or not whatever. It's just that they was not in tune to what was going on for you, right? So this is not like, oh yeah, I'm this way because blah blah blah. Told you change it. Okay, so now since you're learning it, don't sit there and blame other people for how you acting, because now you're 50 years old and you can't start talking about someone you was 3 and you was 2, because you could change. They probably ain't even alive no more. So you fix it up, make some changes. Okay, you can do it. I promise you can. If you try to, if you want to. And so I'm glad you're enjoying it. And so we can really have an opportunity to be able to move. Now, if you want to check to see if somebody is like one of those avoiding categories, let me tell you kind of the things to look for, right? So they might be like consistently or persistently that physical or emotional intimacy, right? So you might not see that. They may feel threatened by anybody who try to get close to you, right? Like you might get some new friends and they might start, kind of coming around. They get jealous. It becomes an issue, even if it's not even fulfilling the same type of thing. So an example, told you I'm not giving no names. I guess time for y'all to be messaging enough. Okay. And so say for instance, you and your partner, right? And let's see who I'm gonna make let me see here. Thinking carefully because y'all be blaming me for stuff and I'll just be trying to give examples, okay? So let's say we're gonna make, well, the research said that men are typically avoidant in that 2018 study. So we're gonna let them be avoidant, right? So we're gonna let the man be avoidant in this situation. All right. So y'all out on a date. Let's see here. We now like in November, they got the nice igloos, the downtown Chicago, right? It's gonna look cold and you can be on the igloos like right by the water or something, right? Now, mind you, I'm making this example up. All right. So it's not a client, so I'm not talking about nobody, okay? Y'all out, and there happens to be some other people walking by you all on the riverfront, and you out, out with your husband. There's a husband and a wife, and somebody speaks to the wife and the husband, since the study said that men are more likely to be yes, absolutely, like the man is like a little bit avoidant, and somebody come by and speak like, hey girl, how are you? And all of a sudden he started looking and he feel like she trying to be with you, or she gonna take you away and all of that, right? Like if you seen that kind of happen, your husband may have an avoidant attachment style. That's okay. If he wants to change, he can develop. But I'm going to tell you something at the end of how you can work with different people with their different kind of attachment styles. Because it's all the way in which you work with people, right? One, they got to want to get ready to change, but while they working on change, we got to depend on how we're going to work with other people, because we got the information now. If it's not for us, it's for somebody else. Right? How was that we're able to work with them? Maybe they're also dismissive of others, right? If they kind of dismissive people, they're not really listening, they probably have an avoidant attachment style, right? They have a strong sense of independence. I can do that myself. I know how to do this. They got the George Lopez, I got this, all the time, right? And they really need some help and they don't have it, but they're gonna pretend. Yeah, something like that, right? Or they like to spend a whole lot of time. I love myself. I don't need no, sometimes you do need to have some self-care and spend time alone, right? I'm not telling you go find some occupied time every single minute. But they the ones who like, are vocal and they announce that they love being by themselves. Those typically the people who are like have an avoidant attachment style. Right. And so it's typically sometimes kind of manifested or it shows up in relationships by their lacking intimacy, right? And simply it's just typically just not there, right? For the in an individual romantic relationship or a friendship, there's just no depth in there, right? They may, if it's your friend, they may call and y'all just talk about the day, but there's no deep feelings. It's nothing like how you felt or how you were able to interact. Nothing like that was going on because they just simply can't do it. But you're unable to have that type of connection or that type of thing to have people to move forward, right? And so, let's take a woo side. We're not gonna take a real break. We're just gonna. All right, that was our visual pause, right, and our auditory pause. Now we're gonna move to the next thing. Told you I like to try to give us a little information, but I don't want us to have too much on our brain so we can't function or really operate. So if y'all taking notes, you're gonna make this as a new section now. Now we're gonna talk about the anxious attachment style. So now if you're really paying attention to the numbers, this is the third type of attachment style that Bowlby has theorized back in the 50s, right? In the 1950s. I know this might be way down the line. So back in the 1950s, that's when this was first theorized and then broken down into some other maybe sections depending on the theorist. So an anxious attachment style, or sometimes it's known from other theorists as anxious ambivalent or anxious preoccupied. That's just another type of names for them, and they may be further defined by those theorists. And it's a type of insecure attachment, right? And so we typically can see it by they have a fear of rejection, a fear of abandonment. They got some codependent tendencies. They might be a little bit codependent, like they kind of need. Right? They can't do a lot of stuff without you. Yeah, they need help, right? All the time, depending on you. And being able, another one may be that they're depending on a partner for validation or that emotional regulation. Like you got to help them out a whole bunch. They ain't like the other person, right? That's just doing all the extra stuff and just trying to be all independent. Now they need help to move forward. Again, don't feel embarrassed if this is something that may affect you. You can change. All right. And so it's typically something that is developed by inconsistent parenting, right? It's not there. The parents weren't necessarily attuned to the child's needs and the things that they were needing and they were lacking, right? They was, present, and none of these is like the parent was just, going by the wayside or something like that. Or in the witness protection program and you couldn't see them. They were available, just maybe not emotionally or physically or just meeting all the needs that the child had. Not like the, DCFS case or something like they wasn't there or something like that, right? Not necessarily. I mean, some could have had that, right? That could be a particular incident or thing that's occurred, right? It's typical that the children have absolutely, we can change, we can get ready to do some things, we can break habits, we can do all the stuff if we want to. If you don't want to, fine, cut this off. You got to listen to it. It's not gonna be helpful for you if you don't want to do no changing. You didn't take no notes from nobody else, and you need to be the person changing. And so for us to be able to identify, hey, this is something that I want to do. And so it's developed oftentimes when the children had difficulty or they have difficulty in understanding their caregivers, or they're not necessarily having security or certainty into what to expect or what's going to happen next, right? For them being able to move forward. What's the next steps? They're oftentimes sometimes confused with their parental relationships, and because they're oftentimes unstable, right? Not necessarily like the parenting disappeared, but more so of maybe one week they cheering you on, woo, 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 and the next week they hollering at you, slam you down for a particular thing and not necessarily praising you. It's just going back and forth, not that from one extreme to the next. And it's nothing that the child can know, like, and that's something that is common, right? Like I have people that say, well, you know what, I didn't know what to expect. So sometimes I didn't say anything because sometimes they might holler, sometimes they might have slammed my head up against the counter. Other times we might have been able to have a good thing and they was clapping their hands and they took them out to eat, right? And being able to know that that's something that goes on for individuals. And so, if an individual has something of an anxious attachment style, one theorist does note that it's alternating, or it alternates rather, between overly coddling a child and then detached or indifferent, right? Like, okay, we're gonna do this. Oh, my baby. Oh, you hit your head. Oh, then they say, why'd you hit your head for that? It's like, oh, okay, all right. What we're gonna get ready to do, right? You were made to feel responsible for things or how they actually felt, or maybe you have been sometimes they were inattentive and they kind of push you away, right? That's something that may have happened. Right now, here are some signs that maybe you might be able to tell that the person is in an anxious, or they have developed an anxious attachment style. They clingy. They got the clingy tendencies. Ooh, they clingy, 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 clingy. Got a client I didn't have to my phone on. Do not disturb for them. They really think that we friends. Your client probably on the call right now. They think we're friends, right? Clingy is one, right? You ever had those kind of friends? They need to know everything that you're doing. Like, they gotta look at you, they gotta tell, they gotta see what's going on. They're clingy. Maybe they're feeling unworthy of love, or not necessarily feeling that individuals love them, or that they have that worth or that value. Maybe they need that approval from others. You know, the friends that they always need. What you think about this? Well, if it sounded good to you, it sounded good to me, right? That's typically my response. But I have to remember that some people, they may value your opinion a lot because they need that extra kind of like, yeah, that's a good idea. Now, sometimes the ideas don't be the grandest, but they kind of be into it. So you might have to pump them up a little bit, like, oh, good idea. But my response was, before I was really able to understand this connection, sound good to you. If it sound good to me, if it sound good to you, I'm rocking with it. We're gonna change our language a little bit, especially when some people may be depending on us to help them out a little bit, right? Or maybe they have difficulty in being alone. They don't want to sleep by themselves, they don't want to do nothing by themselves, they just can't function. Like they gotta have somebody to do stuff with them. Otherwise, it's the end of the world, or maybe the end of their world, or their perceived, or their perception, right? They're typically highly critical to, or highly sensitive rather, to criticism. Or that's something, or even perceived criticism. It may not always be actual criticism, but it may be a comment that's it, and they perceive it as some type of criticism, and they're sensitive to that. They have an intense fear. Absolutely. Now the child is emotionally confused. They have this intense fear of rejection. Like because they're not gonna look at me and they're just gonna be so scared. And you scared you're gonna get rejected, right? Or they scared they're gonna get rejected and you're not gonna get ready to do something. This typically kind of shows up in the relationships when you're feeling unworthy of being loved, and you always need reassurance, right? Like, heard and seen all type of stuff, right? Like people getting ready to have a relationship, where they in a relationship, it's almost wedding day, and I don't know if he still loves me, not sure. And every week it's like, okay, well, y'all been in this engagement for like a year. If he didn't really love you, y'all wouldn't be getting married. But no matter how many times I say it, no matter how many times the fiance says it, it's difficult for those kind of feelings and those thoughts to come away from that, because they have this anxious attachment style, right? Which is then also manifested in anxiety, intrusive thoughts, and then we're trying to process through all of that. When the real issue is something went on back up in there, when you was a kid, and now we at like 40 years old, and we trying to say, does he love me? And y'all done spent like $100 and some thousand on the wedding. But I digress, right? So that's kind of what that looked like. Now we're going to take a real official pause. We're going to go, right? We're going to take a pause. We're going to listen to some music, right? We'll take a little break. When we come back, we're going to go through the final attachment style. We're going to get an overview of everything, and then we're going to wrap it up with how we're going to interact with each of these individuals with each type of attachment style. Stay tuned. I'll be back.
In this season of uncertainty, sickness and fear, riots and racial injustices, this pandemic that has created world unrest, my brothers and my sisters, my prayer is that the Lord would keep our minds and our hearts stayed on Him. Lord, keep my mind stayed on You. Lord, keep my mind stayed on You. Lord, keep my mind stayed on You. I don't want to give the enemy no ground. There's a place in God, a place called peace, a place called rest, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Lord, keep my mind in perfect peace. Lord, keep my mind in perfect peace. Lord, keep my mind in perfect peace. I don't want to give the enemy no ground. Because no matter what we go through, we have a God we can turn to. Just remember, it all belongs to Him. My mind belongs to You. Lord, my mind belongs to You. My mind belongs to You. I don't want to give the enemy no ground. My body belongs to You, Lord. Oh, my body belongs to You. Oh, my body belongs to You. I don't want to give the enemy no ground. My soul belongs to You. Yes, Lord. My soul belongs to You. My soul belongs to You. I don't want to give the enemy. I don't want to give the enemy. I don't care what the enemy says. I don't care what the devil says. I don't want to give the enemy no ground. 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 I don't want to give the enemy no ground.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back to those of you who are just joining us. This is our journey. I am LaDonna Miller. During our journey, we process through mental health topics, mental health issues, things that may have just come up in therapy sessions. I am a licensed clinical social worker, meaning I am a therapist here in the state of Illinois. During today's segment, we have been processing through the 4 different types of attachment styles and identifying what they are, how we are able to thrive from them by having that particular knowledge, right? And so we've gone through 3 thus far. We're going to hit that 4th and final big picture attachment style. And then we're going to just go through just for a few moments how we can interact with individuals who may have a particular attachment style. All right. And as always, I can always do a follow-up. So if you have questions, definitely comment. If you're watching kind of some sort of replay throughout the week, definitely go ahead and leave it. I typically go back and monitor for us to see what it is if individuals have questions, or feel free to send me a direct kind of message, right? So that way we can go ahead and get your questions either answered, either on the air or off the air, because I want to make sure that we are able to have the information, have the education that we need to be able to move forward in life, and not having mental health to be a topic that we have our lips shut on, to be something that we act like it don't exist, right? But yet everyone is suffering or have particular things that's going on that could help us out to be more healthy individuals and be able to thrive, live, and move together, right? And so that's definitely going to be something that's important for us to understand and to divulge into. So, the fourth and final big picture attachment style is the disorganized attachment style, right? So some people may say it's anxious, disorganized. It's basically defined as having extremely inconsistent behavior and difficulty in trusting others, right? People who got trust issues. Again, if we have these attachment styles, we can change them to be whatever we want. We can pick one of the four, or we can go get us a different theorist and we can get a different one, and we can fall on a different section of the attachment style. If you put in some of that work to do some changing, okay, that's definitely something that we can do. And although I'm educating, I'm also really wanting us to understand that no matter what we have experienced, we as individuals are in control of how we live our predestined lives. All right. And so it's typically kind of develops, or is typically developed by disorganized attachment style through childhood. There was some type of childhood trauma, neglect, or abuse by the parent or parents that kind of left it where their sense of safety, the individual sense of safety, was let down. There was not necessarily a safe place for the individual within their immediate context of their caregiver. And so children with this particular attachment style, they may oftentimes feel confused, or they may seem confused. It's not necessarily something that they're able to move or maneuver through. The caregivers are typically inconsistent, or they were often seen as sources of comfort by and care by children with fear, which leads to those disorganized behaviors. Right now, you might be able to tell that a person is disorganized or anxious, disorganized, that they have that fear of rejection. So, kind of like the last one we just went through, they have difficulty in trusting others. They have contradictory behaviors. Their behaviors ain't aligned with what they were just saying, and they doing one thing and doing something else. They ain't lining up. All right. They have showing signs of both avoidant and attachment and anxious attachment styles, right? So it's kind of like a combination, like, okay, might be. Like they showing both of those, they disorganized. They can even fall into one. They definitely not falling into secure though. We're gonna be clear on that. They falling into the other two. This is kind of like if two attachment styles could get together, this is it. Disorganized. And so I know y'all probably like, hey, that's the same thing she just said. Right, because it's kind of like combination of the two. They're showing kind of some signs of each one, but not necessarily like every single thing, but like a little bit from here, a little bit from there. They disorganized. They don't know if they're gonna be anxious or avoidant. They just they don't know, but they don't because it's disorganized. It's just all of that. And so it's oftentimes, I'm gonna be honest with you, right? It's sometimes easy to tell when individuals have this because it's comorbid, right? You got you have some disorders, right? Because some of these, like, okay, well, there's an attachment style issue. Let's process through that, and we're able to move on. And there's some things, mood disorders, depression, and so forth. Okay, personality disorders, they're self-harming or substance use disorders. So like addiction to substances. All right. Those are some common things that these are comorbid with. When they disorganize and have a disorganized attachment style, it's oftentimes associated that they have this as well, right? That's just something that's common that many theorists have theorized. I haven't seen every person in the world. I don't know, but for many individuals, I'm in alignment with them and in agreement that when I see this kind of come up, oftentimes these are some of the diagnoses, if not kind of comorbid with each other, that the individuals have, which again, we can change. You can't wish away or change away a particular diagnosis. However, you can learn to adapt and learn to change your lifestyle, the behaviors that you have to interact, since now you're aware that this is something that's going on, right? It's typically manifested, right? Let me get off of that. It's typically manifested by them being unpredictable in their behaviors in relationships. They have those confusing behaviors. They sometimes be like aloof, and then they want to be like super independent, and then they're clingy and they're emotional. It's like, well, hold on. Okay, what's going on here? And so like they desperately, they kind of want to be in love. They desperately seek love, but then they push away, and because they have that fear of love. And so because they feel that they're gonna always be rejected, or that's what happened to them back when in childhood. And so they're unable to realize, like, oh my gosh, this is how this is manifesting in my relationship, and this is how things are going for me. What is it that I need to do, or what is it that's going on? What's going on? But being able to know and to identify, hey, this is how I thrive. This is how I'm able to push, right? So they always kind of perceive their partners to be unpredictable. It's like, no, it's you. But being able to know and to identify that it is a particular individual may not always be the easiest thing. All right. Before we close, I do want to encourage you to maybe go back, refresh yourselves. There's lots of assessments I know on the internet, some brief ones, right? Typically in therapy, we may administer a 45 minutes to an hour assessment. It may be like, if you print it, I know some of them are maybe like 30 pages, 20 something pages, depending on which assessment by which theorist we're completing or we're going through. But there's some that's like maybe 2 or 3 sheets, or even some that you can complete on the internet. You don't need to print out and code and have many numbers and all of this and that, right? There are some that's a little bit more generic if you're just kind of wanting to get some information for person to person to kind of know how things are. And if that's something that you want, go ahead, just go to your favorite internet browser. They ain't none of them paying me, so I'm not gonna tell you which one to go to. You browse the internet, so go find the one that you like, and just type in attachment style assessment, and kind of pick the one that looks like the one that you may want to complete. I encourage you to do that because it may be something that's going to be helpful for your friends as you interact, or maybe even your relationships, your intimate relationships with your partners, and being able to thrive and to know, like, you know what, this is something that is going on. I've noticed that they might be a little bit like disorganized. Maybe there's something that I don't know about, or maybe you kind of already know the attachment style by listening today. Like, okay, this is something that's going on here. Let's get ready to kind of operate. Now, once you complete the each of the assessments, many of them may have a little bit of a paragraph or page, depending on which assessment you do, how thorough of an assessment it is, that explains what the particular concerns are. It'll explain it kind of like what we went through today. And it'll also give some information as to how you could maybe work with the particular individual, right? Like if you notice they kind of like the jealous type, right? Like they're the kind that are not necessarily able to thrive and to be, very confident in themselves. You may want to do some extra assuring, right? Like if you notice that that's the type of attachment that they have, right? Or if you notice that, okay, they need to be kind of pumped up before we do something because they may be extrinsically motivated or they need that extra motivation, go for it, right? And being able to assure them that some things are there and this is how you can operate, or maybe be able to show them a little bit more grace and love and being able to understand and move forward, right? And so once we are to that place to that point of us knowing and feeling comfortable is definitely going to be something that is understood, something for us to move forward with. All right. I do hope that this was something that was truly beneficial or educational for you. If not for you personally, because maybe you know your attachment style, you can delve all into it. But for maybe some relationships with your children, with yourself, knowing that this information is not only something that affects you, it also affects the individuals who maybe you're birthing or that you're the caregiver of how they will relate and how they will create their attachment style. All right. You're knowing you, even though you older and all this and that, that's how they're going to develop. That is how this is. So if you heard, I mean, even though we can change, it's definitely something that's maybe helpful that if in the beginning they had that support. All right. And we want people to have secure attachment styles, confidence in themselves, sure of themselves, able to thrive and to have those long-standing friendships and relationships, being able to connect with people and go back to them, right? Because they're secure in the stuff that they do. Right. And being able to thrive. So even if right now you do not have a secure attachment style, you can develop, work at it to have it if you want it. All right. I do hope this was helpful, educational, informational for you. We're going to pause and we will be back with another segment. All right. Next week, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC